Hi guys, welcome back to my channel of Deep Dive. Today we're going to discuss about web optimization. Like you must be knowing that web is evolving every single day and a new framework is coming, and it's very difficult for a new web developer to understand the basics of how to optimize the website. So I thought it would be better to have a small discussion. We'll just cover the breadth of it, and then if required, we go deep dive into some of the specific areas. So stay tuned on my topic for web optimization. So checklist number one for a web developer is to ensure that the resources that they download, that the browser download, which is maybe a JavaScript or a CSS or images, yeah, it has to be minimized. It has to be minified, and there are tools for doing that. One I know is Webpack or other tools like Grunt, which minifies, which runs on your source code and minifies so that the browser downloads a minified version of it. The second in the checklist is that you have to ensure that all the script tags or all the resources that you download shouldn't block your render, because JavaScript is basically a single execution, is like a unique threaded application. So you have to make sure that whatever you do shouldn't block the render. And to ensure that you can put your script tags at the bottom of your page, maybe at the bottom of your body, so that, and you have to also make sure that it doesn't hampers with the logic after rendering. Yeah, some of the applications have multiple modules, and it's always a good idea to break your application into multiple modules, and also make sure that only the modules which are being required by the viewport is only being downloaded, and that concept is called lazy loading. In web, there are multiple strategies of doing a lazy loading stuff, either based on the routes, because suppose you are at the route say about, then you don't need the route say contact us. Okay, you don't need the resources at this particular route. So one way of doing is to have a lazy loading based on the routes and chunking. Like if you do web, if you go through Webpack, it has an ability to make the chunks, basically the bundles, based on the different routes. So yeah, you can have the lazy loading, and in lazy loading there are multiple strategies. Routing is just one of the strategies for like a vertically infinite page, say Facebook, where there isn't many routes but the page is vertically infinite. There also you need to have that lazy loading stuff based on the scroll. You need to listen that scroll event, and based on that scroll you have to fire APIs, or we have to fire the chase which is being required by the bottom of the page. So lazy loading. Yeah, so like another very important point for web automation is caching. So caching is something you might have heard in my earlier videos of system design as well. So caching is something that can happen, or that should happen at various stages, not just the front end, but the front end, back end, database, and that multiple various layers actually. But since this session is about web optimization, I'll talk about the caching at the client end. So yeah, client end also we can do caching, and that caching has to be done at browser level. Browser, if you must have faced that if you opens a website and you open the website again, the second experience is generally better, because by default browser caches the assets, and by assets I mean JavaScript, CSS, images, fonts, and other things which are static. So we can leverage that thing at the client end. So we can set the timeout period, we can set the stuffs, and we can also uh, make sure that the cache also gets invalidated whenever there's a changes at the backend, at the maybe at the whenever you change the JavaScript, you want the browser to discard the older cache and get the latest cache. And there are ways to do that. One of the ways is basically attaching a timestamp, or basically a version number at the end of the file name, so that whenever a new file generates, it the number gets changed and browser sees that the file name has completely been changed because that suffix has changed, and it downloads that file from the browser, from the server. And Webpack does that. So if you go through the Webpack tutorial, you can see that that versioning is being done automatically by Webpack. In continuation to caching, you might also have heard of this thing called service worker. We can leverage that as well. Service worker will give your application an offline experience, which is what PWA is all about. So that which is like very similar to an app, because app has the offline experience, or when you open an app, even in the offline mode, you can get some of the data, and exactly that is what service worker does for the web. So if you use service worker intelligently, you are going to increase the user experience a lot. Another concept related to web optimization is about rendering, the type of rendering that an application does. And broadly, there are two type of rendering mechanism. One is the client-side rendering, and other is the server-side rendering. Uh, Client-side rendering is like like the DOMs and everything is built at the client end, and the server-side rendering is that server returns a completely built HTML and it's being rendered on the client. It's just being shown at the client end. So it's a detailed topic. You can find a description in this below. But yeah, but like how can I use the type of rendering to optimize my performance? So obviously there's a different debate at which kind of rendering is better, but I basically support this has to be, there's not a single solution to it. It has to be a mixture of it. So I basically prefer my application to be isomorphic. That means that the application is neither client side rendered completely, neither server side rendered completely, but a mixture of that. So that, like if I say it, that means the skeleton might be server side rendered, but the internal widgets should be your client side rendered. So that gives the user an immediate feel of something gets downloaded as soon as he enters the click button of the browser bar. So, and it's definitely gives a much better user experience and give support to the web optimization. Another concept related to web optimization is the use of web worker. So it's all right if you haven't heard of it. It's something, it's a worker, something which works at a different thread than the normal thread, and helps us in doing a computationally intensive operation, because as we all know that JavaScript is a unithread, and if you do a computationally intensive task at JavaScript, your render or your browser experience, user experience will be halt. And that's why to enhance the performance or enhance the experience, it's always recommended to use the worker. It's a relatively very new concepts, and the detail, it obviously requires a deep dive detail, and the link is in below of this particular video. But just to give you a glimpse of it, web worker is something which runs on a parallel thread, cannot access your DOM, but it can communicate with you using some push, using the APIs, the notification APIs. You can communicate with that, and for a heavy computation work, generally we don't do a highly computation work at client end, and if it is, but sometimes it is inevitable, it is required, and for that you have to use web worker. Another concept related to web optimization is the number of API calls. Now that is something you have to make a very conscious call, that how many API calls you want to trigger. Like you want to merge all data into a single API, or you want to break everything into multiple API. Because browser, for example, Chrome supports 5 different API calls at the same time, and that is something you can leverage. So you have to make a very conscious decision that you don't want one API to get too much bloated so that it blocks the render. Also, you don't want too much breaking of your API so that some of the APIs stalls the other API calls because the parallel execution is being blocked by the browser itself. So optimizing the number of API call also has a very much impact on the performance of your website. So guys, I have covered some of the very basic things which we should be knowing for web optimization. Obviously there are many other things as well, and with the advent of single page application framework, uh, it might also increase, and we have many frameworks available for building a single page application, some of which is like Angular has many versions. The latest version I guess is Angular 7 or 8. Then we have React, then we have Vue, and many others are coming in the down the line. So all of them basically focuses on, all of them has these things to achieve one way or another. So I think the best way is to have these practices, to have these things. Thanks guys for listening to my video. Stay tuned for further videos on system design and optimization. Till then, you can subscribe it and click the bell icon and don't miss any further videos. Thanks.